The deafening blast echoed across the barren landscape as the nuclear warhead obliterated the teeming horde of undead. Eliza watched from the safety of the bunker, her heart pounding with a glimmer of hope this nightmare might finally be over. But as the mushroom cloud dissipated, her relief turned to horror. Shambling figures emerged from the radioactive fallout, their movements jerky and spasmodic. Eliza stared in disbelief as the zombies seemed to move with greater speed and coordination than before. Worst of all, their flesh had taken on a sickly green hue, and their eyes glowed with an eerie, inhuman light. These were no ordinary zombies, Eliza realized with dread. The nuclear blast had somehow mutated and empowered them. This new breed was stronger, faster, and more intelligent than anything she had encountered before. Gripping her son's hand, she backed away as the horde surged forward, drawn by the scent of the few remaining human survivors. Only days ago, this bunker had been a last bastion of hope, a refuge where Eliza and a dwindling band of other desperate souls clung to the dream of rebuilding a shattered world. Now it felt like a tomb as the undead pounded against the reinforced doors. Eliza knew it was only a matter of time before they broke through. Her mind raced, trying to recall the details of the military protocols. She had studied maps of evacuation routes, contingency plans. Everything seemed to have been rendered useless by this new unprecedented threat. The end was closing in, and she was utterly unprepared. Eliza turned to her son, Nathan, his young face etched with terror. She pulled him close, heartbreaking, as she realized this might be their final moments together. "Nathan, we have to get out of here," she said urgently. "We have to find a way to escape this place before they get inside." Nathan nodded, trembling. "I trust you, Mom. We'll get through this somehow, I know we will." Eliza wished she shared his optimism, but she could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes as the thunderous impacts against the door grew more violent. She steeled her resolve. They had to try everything to survive. This was not the end, not yet. She scanned the dimly lit bunker, searching for any avenue of escape. The ventilation shafts were too small, the emergency hatch too heavily fortified. The only way out was the main entrance, and that was rapidly becoming a death trap. Eliza weighed their options. Desperately staying put meant certain death, but venturing outside meant braving the mutant horde and the unknown dangers of the radioactive wasteland beyond. Drawing a steadying breath, she made her decision. "Nathan, we have to go now." She grabbed his hand, and together they raced towards the barricaded doors, determined to face whatever horrors awaited them in the ruined world above. Eliza and Nathan burst out of the bunker into a nightmarish landscape. The once verdant fields were now a scorched and desolate wasteland. Mutated zombies roamed the ruined streets, their movements jerky and unnatural. Eliza flinched as their hollow eyes tracked her every step. Gripping Nathan's hand, she sprinted down the crumbling road, desperate to put distance between them and the horde behind. The bunker had been breached, and they had to find safety fast. But as they ran, Eliza realized with sinking dread that the mutants were faster and more agile than normal zombies. She could hear their snarls and the pounding of their feet growing ever closer. "Where can we go, Eliza?" she cried out to her son. "There has to be somewhere we can hide." Nathan scanned their surroundings, his young face etched with fear. But everything was in ruins. No buildings seemed intact enough to offer shelter. Eliza felt panic rise within her. As the horde gained ground, she knew they could not outrun the mutants for long. Up ahead, Eliza spotted the rusting hulk of an abandoned car. She yanked open the door and shoved Nathan inside. "Hurry, get in the back seat," she commanded. "I'll try to lose them." Nathan scrambled into the car, trembling. Eliza slammed the door and raced around to the driver's side. Her heart pounded as she jammed the key in the ignition, praying the engine would start. With a cough and a sputter, the car roared to life. Eliza floored the accelerator, and the vehicle lurched forward. In the rearview mirror, Eliza could see the horde of mutants in pursuit, their unnatural speed allowing them to easily keep up. Even as she swerved through the debris-strewn streets, she knew it was only a matter of time before they caught up. With a sinking feeling, she realized their only chance was to put as much distance between them and the mutants as possible. Eliza drove recklessly, weaving through the wasteland, her focus solely on escape. Nathan gripped the seat, his knuckles white as he stared out the rear window. "Can you see them?" she called out anxiously. Nathan shook his head. "The horde has fallen behind, but they're still coming." Eliza gritted her teeth and pressed the pedal to the floor. The car lurched forward faster as she pushed it to its limits. She had to find somewhere they could hold up, somewhere safe from the mutant zombies. Until then, all she could do was run. After what felt like an eternity, the car sputtered and slow. Eliza cursed as she realized they were out of fuel. Desperately, she scanned the area for any sign of shelter or a place to hide, but there was nothing but ruins and debris as far as the eye could see. She turned to Nathan, his face pale with fear. "It'll get us to safety," she promised, though she could hear the doubt in her own voice. She took a steadying breath and opened the car door. Staying close to the vehicle, Eliza and Nathan began to pick their way through the rubble. Eliza kept her eyes peeled for any sign of the mutants, but so far the area seemed deserted. The only sounds were the crunch of broken glass and the occasional moan of the wind. They had to find cover soon before the horde caught up to them. But where Eliza wondered desperately as they trudged on, her heart sinking with every step. The future had never seemed so bleak. As the sun began to set, Eliza and Nathan came upon what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. Its towering walls and thick metal doors offered the promise of a secure shelter. Eliza paused, eyeing the structure warily. The mutant zombies could be anywhere. The last thing they needed was to stumble into a trap. But their other options were dwindling fast, and the horde was likely still in pursuit. At this point, any port in a storm seemed preferable to remaining out in the open. Gripping Nathan's hand, she cautiously approached the doors, running her fingers along the heavy bolts. Whoever had barricaded this place clearly meant to keep something out or in. Eliza peered through the grimy windows, squinting to make out any movement within. The warehouse seemed deserted, but she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that they were being watched. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan whispered, his voice trembling. Eliza looked into his eyes, seeing the fear there, but she forced a reassuring smile. "We don't have a choice, sweetheart. We have to get inside before the sun goes down." Nathan nodded reluctantly, and Eliza turned her attention back to the heavy doors. After a few moments of struggle, she managed to heave one open just enough for them to slip inside. The interior was cavernous and dimly lit. Rusting machinery and crates were scattered about in disarray. Eliza paused, letting her eyes adjust, her muscles tensed, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. But the warehouse remained silent save for the faint creaking of the wind against the walls. Slowly, she relaxed her grip on Nathan's hand, giving him a gentle squeeze. "See," she whispered, "we made it now. We just need to find a place to hole up for the night." Nathan looked around, unconvinced. "This place gives me the creeps, Mom. What if something's in here with us?" Eliza shook her head firmly. "Don't worry, it'll keep you safe, I promise. We just need to be extra careful, that's all." With that, she began to cautiously explore the warehouse, Nathan trailing close behind her. She kept one hand on her knife, ready to draw it at the first hint of danger. As they navigated the shadowy aisles, Eliza noticed a door at the far end of the building. It appeared to lead to some kind of office or security station. If they could secure that space, it might provide the shelter they so desperately needed. Silently, she gestured for Nathan to follow, and they made their way towards the door. Reaching out, she gripped the handle and gave it a tentative turn. To her relief, it swung open without a sound. They slipped inside the dimly lit room, locking the door behind them at last. They seemed to have found a safe haven from the horrors outside. Eliza and Nathan huddled in the small office space, scanning their surroundings for any sign of danger. The room was sparsely furnished, a battered desk and a few rickety chairs the only furnishings. Eliza moved to the window, peering cautiously outside. Night had fallen, and the warehouse was cloaked in shadow. But in the distance, she could make out the faint shapes of the mutant zombies roaming the streets. Turning back to Nathan, she gave him a reassuring nod. "We're safe in here for now," she whispered. "Just need to stay quiet and keep our heads down until morning." Nathan nodded, but Eliza could see the worry etched on his young face. The mutants were unlike anything they had faced before, and the uncertainty of their situation had clearly shaken him. Eliza pulled him into a hug, wishing she could spare him from this nightmare. But with the world crumbling around them, all she could do was try to protect him the best she could. As they sat huddled together, the sound of movement outside the door made them both freeze. Eliza felt Nathan tense in her arms, and she tightened her grip on her knife, ready to defend them both. The door handle rattled, and Eliza held her breath, bracing for the worst. But after a moment, the sound faded, and all was still once more. She let out the breath she had been holding, glancing at Nathan with a relieved nod. "Must have just been the wind," she whispered, "but we can't let our guard down, not for a second." Nathan responded with a shaky smile, squeezing Eliza's hand. "I'm just glad we're safe in here." Eliza forced a smile in return, though her mind was racing. The warehouse seemed secure enough, but she knew it was only a temporary refuge. Sooner or later, they would have to venture out again and face the horrors of the mutant-infested wasteland. And then there was the unknown threat of whatever or whoever else might be lurking in the shadows of this place. Eliza shuddered, inwardly determined to keep Nathan safe, no matter what came their way. As the night wore on, they took turns keeping watch, Eliza refusing to let her exhaustion overtake her. At last, as the first hint of dawn crept over the horizon, she allowed herself to relax marginally, her grip on the knife finally loosening. "Time to get moving," she murmured. "We need to see if we can find a way out of this place before more of those things show up." Nathan nodded shakily, and Eliza pulled him close one more time. "Don't worry," she whispered. "We'll get through this, I promise." With a steadying breath, she turned the handle and cautiously pushed open the door, bracing herself for whatever fresh hell might await them beyond. Eliza and Nathan crept out of the office, surveying the shadowy warehouse with wary eyes. So far it seemed deserted, but Eliza knew better than to let her guard down. She scanned the cavernous space, searching for any sign of an exit or a potential escape route. The mutant zombies could return at any moment, and they needed to be ready to move fast. As they made their way deeper into the warehouse, Eliza couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that they were being watched. Every creak of the aged timbers, every scuttle of rodent feet, had her jumping at shadows. Nathan kept close to her side, his wide eyes darting back and forth. Eliza could sense his growing panic, and she gave his hand a gentle squeeze, trying to convey a reassurance she didn't fully feel. "Stick close to me," she whispered. "We'll find a way out of here before nightfall, I promise." Nathan nodded, but Eliza could see the doubt in his expression. He was as scared as she was, maybe even more. So this new world they found themselves in was a nightmare beyond anything they could have imagined. Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed through the warehouse. Eliza froze, Nathan behind her, eyes going wide. "What's that?" she breathed, gripping her knife tightly. Nathan's voice trembled. "I don't know." Eliza strained to hear any other sounds, but the warehouse had gone eerily silent. The only thing she could make out was the pounding of her own heart. Slowly, she crept forward, Nathan clinging to the back of her shirt. They rounded a corner, and Eliza felt her breath catch in her throat. Before them stood a group of shadowy figures emerging from behind a stack of crates. Eliza tensed, ready to fight, but as they drew closer, she realized these were no ordinary zombies. The creatures advanced jerkily, their movements unnatural and unsettling. Eliza felt a chill run down her spine as she took in their strange greenish hue and the hollow glowing eyes. "Mutants," she breathed, her grip on the knife tightening. She glanced around desperately, but they were surrounded, snarling and snapping. The mutants closed in their unnatural speed and strength, making them all the more terrifying. Eliza backed up slowly, pulling Nathan behind her. As the first mutant lunged at her, she swung her blade in a wide arc, slicing into its rotten flesh. The creature staggered, but it didn't go down. Eliza felt a surge of panic as it launched itself at her again. This was no ordinary fight, she realized with sinking dread. These things weren't going to be as easy to kill as the regular zombies. Bracing herself, she steeled her resolve, determined to protect Nathan no matter what it took. Eliza fought with a ferocity born of desperation as the mutant zombies surged towards her and Nathan. She slashed and stabbed, but the creatures simply shrugged off her attacks, their regenerative abilities far beyond that of a normal undead foe. One of the mutants lunged at her, its jaws snapping inches from her face. Eliza recoiled, but the creature caught her arm in its teeth, sinking its rotten fangs into her flesh. She cried out in pain, but refused to drop her knife, lashing out and finally sending the mutant stumbling back. Nathan watched in horror, his eyes wide with terror. Eliza, ill. "Hold them off," she yelled over the snarls of the horde. "Just find a way out of here." Nathan hesitated for a moment, his face a mask of fear and indecision. But then he nodded and darted away, dodging the mutants as he searched for an escape. Eliza redoubled her efforts, fighting with every ounce of her strength, but the mutants were relentless. No matter how many she cut down, more seemed to take their place. She felt her strength beginning to wane, her lungs burning from the exertion. Just as she was about to be overwhelmed, a gun blast rang out, one of the mutants' head exploding in a shower of gore. Eliza whirled to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a rifle clutched in their hands. Quickly she scanned the area, spotting Nathan safe behind a stack of crates, waving to her frantically. Eliza hurried to his side as the unknown figure continued to pick off the mutants one by one. "Who are you?" she demanded breathlessly. The figure moved into the light, revealing a grizzled, middle-aged man, his face etched with hard lines. "Doesn't matter," he growled. "Just get your ass over here." Eliza hesitated for a moment, but the sound of the mutants closing in spurred her forward. She and Nathan scrambled to the man's position, huddling behind the crates as he unleashed another barrage of gunfire. "You're lucky I was here," the man muttered, his eyes never leaving his targets. "These things have been rampaging through the area for days." Eliza opened her mouth to respond, but was cut off by the thunderous crash of a door being smashed open. Whirling around, she watched in horror as an entire horde of mutants surged into the warehouse. The man swore under his breath, rapidly reloading his rifle. "Looks like we're in for one hell of a fight." Eliza gripped Nathan's hand tightly, her heart pounding. "We have to get out of here." The man shook his head grimly. "No chance in hell, you're stuck with me now." Eliza felt a chill of dread as the mutants closed and the shadowy figures advancing with relentless speed and purpose. This was no longer a battle she could win alone. Bracing herself for the fight of her life, she prayed that they could somehow survive the onslaught. The mutant horde swarmed towards them, their glowing eyes and twisted features a horrifying sight to behold. Eliza steeled herself, gripping Nathan's hand as the grizzled stranger opened fire. His rifle cracked again and again, taking down mutant after mutant, but still they kept coming, an endless tide of rotting flesh and razor-sharp teeth. Eliza felt panic rising as she realized they were quickly becoming surrounded. The man cursed as his clip ran dry. "You two, cover me," he snapped, "while I reload." Eliza and Nathan scrambled to obey, brandishing whatever makeshift weapons they could find from the rubble around them. They lashed out at the encroaching mutants with pipes and broken boards, but the creatures seemed impervious to their blows. Eliza watched in horror as one of the mutants overpowered Nathan, knocking him to the ground, its jaws snapping mere inches from his face. With a desperate cry, she threw herself at the creature, slamming the jagged end of a pipe into its skull. The mutant shuddered and collapsed, but Eliza had no time to catch her breath as more of the undead swarmed towards them. The stranger fired off another volley, but it was clear they were quickly becoming overwhelmed. "We need to get out of here now," he yelled, reloading frantically. "Follow me." Eliza grabbed Nathan's hand, and they raced after the man as he led them deeper into the warehouse. Mutants surged all around them, their inhuman howls echoing off the metal walls. Eliza could hear Nathan's ragged breathing as they ran, her own lungs burning, but she refused to slow down. They had to keep moving, or they were as good as dead. Suddenly the stranger skidded to a halt in front of a locked door. "Damn it," he growled, fumbling with the latch. "Hurry," Eliza pleaded as the mutants closed in. They didn't seem to get tired. The man grunted in frustration, but finally the door swung open. "Stand back," he ordered, ushering them inside. Eliza and Nathan rushed through the doorway, and the man slammed it shut behind them, bolting it securely. Eliza listened as the mutants pounded against the metal, their snarls and howls filling the air. For now, they seemed to be safe, but Eliza knew it was only a temporary respite. Their situation had gone from bad to worse, and she had no idea where they were or how they would ever escape this nightmare. She turned to the stranger, his weathered face etched with grim determination. "This place won't hold them forever," he muttered. "We need to keep moving." Eliza nodded reluctantly, knowing he was right. "But where can we possibly go?" she asked, despair creeping into her voice. "The whole world has been overrun by those things." The man fixed her with a piercing stare. "I've got an idea, but it's a long shot, and it's gonna be one hell of a fight." Eliza felt a glimmer of hope rising within her. "Anything is better than staying here," she said resolutely. "We have to try." The stranger nodded. Then you're with me, he said, turning to lead the way deeper into the unknown. Eliza and Nathan followed the stranger through a warren of dark corridors, their footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. Eliza kept a tight grip on Nathan's hand, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings for any sign of danger. The man moved with a sense of purpose, his rifle at the ready as he navigated the twisting passages. Eliza could tell he knew this place well, though she couldn't begin to fathom how. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a cavernous space. Eliza stared in awe at the towering walls and the massive steel doors that dominated the far end of the room. "What is this place?" she breathed. The man didn't answer. Instead, he gestured towards the doors. "This is our way out," he said grimly, "but we'll have to fight our way through." Eliza felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. "So there really is a way to escape this nightmare," she murmured. The man nodded, but his expression was grim. "We won't be the only ones trying to get through those doors," he warned. "The mutants have been swarming this place for days." He leveled his rifle, an ominous click as he chambered around. "That's why we're going to have to fight our way through before they're alerted to our presence." Eliza felt Nathan's grip tighten on her hand. "Ma, I don't know if I can," she whispered, his voice trembling. Eliza pulled him close, shushing him gently. "You're going to be fine," she murmured. "Just stay close to me and do exactly as I say, okay?" Nathan nodded, but Eliza could see the fear in his eyes. She wished she could spare him from this, but with the mutants closing in, they had no choice but to push forward. The man gestured impatiently. "Come on, we need to move. I'll tape point. You two stay close behind me." Eliza nodded, and they set off towards the massive doors, the ominous rumbling of the mutants growing ever closer with each step. As they approached the entryway, Eliza felt her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, their one chance at escape. Yet she knew there was no guarantee they would make it through alive. The man reached the doors first, pausing only to nod at Eliza. "Ready?" he growled. Eliza took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. "Then on my mark," she said quietly. The man tensed, his finger curling around the trigger. 3, 2, 1, go. The doors swung open with a resounding crash, and they surged forward, Eliza and Nathan right on the man's heels as he opened fire on the horde of mutants that lunged towards them. The battle was brutal and merciless, with the creatures swarming them from every angle. Eliza lashed out with her makeshift weapon, cutting and slashing with a primal fury as they fought to break through the onslaught. But the mutants just kept coming, their eerie howls echoing through the cavernous space. Eliza felt her strength beginning to wane, her lungs burning as she struggled to keep up with the man's unrelenting pace. Suddenly, a powerful grip seized her arm, and she whirled around to see a mutant lunging at her, its fangs bared. Eliza braced for the impact, but before the creature could strike, a shot rang out, blasting its head apart in a shower of gore. She spun to see Nathan standing behind her, his expression a mix of terror and determination. Eliza didn't have time to process what had just happened. The man was already surging forward, and she had no choice but to follow. At last, they reached the far side of the doors, but as Eliza crossed the threshold, she turned back in horror to see the horde converging on them, their numbers overwhelming. The man slammed the doors shut, bracing his back against them as the mutants threw themselves against them with bone-jarring force. "Hurry," he grunted, straining to hold them back. Eliza and Nathan quickly joined him, adding their weight to the effort. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the doors might give way, but then, with a resounding groan, the lock engaged, sealing the mutants outside. Eliza stared at the doors, her heart pounding in her ears as the horrific sounds of the horde echoed through the chamber beyond. They had made it through, but at what cost? She turned to the man, his face etched with exhaustion, but also a sense of grim determination. So she said breathlessly, "Where do we go from here?" The man met her gaze, a flicker of something that might have been hope in his eyes. "Just follow me," he said. "There's one place we might have a fighting chance." Eliza glanced at Nathan, seeing the same mixture of fear and resolve in his eyes. Then, without a word, she turned and followed the stranger into the unknown.